Welcome back. Talking about the taboo. You know who, Natalie Malloy. I want to welcome you. You have a curious mind. You're curious about sex. You're curious about relationships. You're here to hear more about that. Today's episode is a crucial episode. It is an episode that talks about something that impacts many lives, and that is domestic violence. It is something that is not only physical, it's psychological, financial, sexual. It is everything that you can think of that other people don't think of. That's domestic violence. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and I thought it was crucial for me to have a podcast episode bringing that awareness. Today's episode is specifically going over the facts, what domestic violence is, different types of domestic violence. In a couple of weeks, we'll have a guest on this podcast from the Bridge podcast that will talk more in depth about domestic violence in the community, specifically the Black community and women in general. They go over a bunch of different topics, and I think it's really crucial for me to have it on this podcast. But today, stay tuned for more statistics, more resources, and just hearing exactly what domestic violence is and what really is happening currently, and the resources that you can help give out to yourself, to family members or friends that are going through something similar. Hey, you're back. So, if you guys do follow my episodes and really dive deep with me, you know that I had an episode called It's My Turn to Heal. And in that episode, it was about my experience with domestic violence. And it lasted a long time. And in that episode, I blamed myself a lot and I take accountability, but a lot of blame. And I try to make that person look like a godsend. I specifically remember too posting that episode, and I ended up getting back with him for like the millionth time. And he said to me, "You need to take that down. It makes me look bad." And to like in my mind, I was like, "Oh, wait. You think it makes you look bad, then it does." And he's like, "Well, all my friends are gonna listen to it and like feel like that's private information." I'm like, "Well, you wouldn't have thrown me across the room to say it bluntly if you didn't really care about what you looked like." What? And so that really awakened something inside of my brain that was like, Wait, I why am I back with you? You threw me across the room. You threatened to burn my dead grandmother's stuff in the basement because I made you upset." And it was just an awful end to that relationship, and it took me to hate him to leave. So that being said, I want to preface anybody who is listening to this who has gone through domestic violence or is going through it now, I don't judge you for staying. It took me so many times to leave him. It took me so much courage and pain to leave him because I was blaming myself, and that's not to discount what I did wrong in the relationship, but that doesn't take away what he did. And I'm not regretful of what I went through because now I know the signs and I know what to look out for and what I don't want. And how amazing is it that I now am in such a soft, kind relationship where if I raise my voice, I feel bad at the end. And he doesn't raise his voice at me. Even when he's mad, he would never do that. And if he ever did, he would know to apologize. So that's an episode that if you want, you can go ahead and listen to it. Again, it's called My Turn to Heal. That's why I thought it was just so important this month to have an episode about domestic violence and bringing awareness to it and the statistics. So first, I want to go over the language, right? So we can refer to them as victim, survivor, person experiencing domestic violence, client, right? Like if we're talking about whether you're working with someone or speaking with someone with domestic violence, because I'm coming from a clinical point of view, because some of these statistics that I've gotten were from a interpartner violence training that I received at my current job. And so when you are talking to them, you will get a sense on what verbiage you really want to use. Some people don't like being called a victim. For me, I don't like being called a victim. It sure as hell feels like I am. I don't know what I would want to be called. Probably just someone who experienced it. And When someone talks to me and they say something outside of that, it's okay. I don't get upset. And that's the biggest thing, is when you're talking to somebody who is going through domestic violence, please don't have that walking on eggshells type of mentality, because we will notice it. They will notice it. And just talk to them in the most kind way possible and be real. Be forefront. You know what I mean? Be blunt. At least that's how I would do it and how I would want it and how I wanted it in that moment. Someone needed to tell me, Natalie, you are in an abusive relationship. You need to leave. You need to leave. And yeah, they could have said that and I would have went back, but those thoughts ruminate. And over time, I'm like, wait, you notice it too? You notice it too? And you? Maybe I am. So just, be very mindful of the verbiage that you use when speaking about or with someone who is a domestic violence survivor, victim, person experiencing, etc. So, what is domestic violence definition? Okay. So, domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behavior where one individual uses fear and intimidation to gain and maintain power and control over another closely related individual. Anybody can experience domestic violence, regardless of age, race, culture, socioeconomic status, gender, etc. Interpartner violence is DV between partner in intimate romantic relationships. DV looks different for everybody, okay? And these go into emotional, psychological, financial, sexual, and physical abuse. All of those have their own categorized meanings and definitions. And so I'm going to kind of go into each topic here and go over examples of what each of these are for you to be kind of more aware of, okay, wait, physical can be this, but like economical, does this mean that, he's in charge of all the bills? Does this mean that I'm in a economically abusive relationship? Maybe, maybe not. So that's where we're going to start. Economic domestic violence looks like fostering financial dependency or preventing access to money. Do you feel a lot of anxiety when you're asking them for money and they felt like you're being a burden when you're asking them for money if they're in charge of all of the money? Maybe employment sabotage. They are like, I feel like your job isn't good for you. Your supervisor treats you like trash. You need to quit. And when you finally quit, they isolate you. Not allowing access to work or school. Maybe you're working on your schoolwork and they're like, well, why are you even studying? Like, you're gonna fail anyway. And like trying to, like, again, isolate you or degrade you or make you feel like you're less than. Running up the bills in the actual person's name. For example, they're opening a credit card in your name and buying things on the credit card and racking it up over your amount and giving you bad credit. Also withholding financial documents from you. That kind of goes hand in hand with like opening things in your name. Maybe you have a credit card statement and you get it in the mail and they rip it from your hand. Like, no, that's not you. And like they manipulate your mind to think like, hey, this is not what you think it is. And because you have those rose-colored glasses on, or you've been gaslit so much, you're like, oh, okay. And you don't think about it until it's too late. Then we have emotional abuse. So this is destroying self-esteem. This can, again, goes hand in hand, makes you feel stupid. Economic can go with emotional, physical, psychological. So all of these, it's like a comorbidity, right? They can happen together or all at once. Humiliating, degrading. This is whether in public or not. Okay, you could be alone in the house and they are just degrading you. And I don't mean the joking like, oh my God, you're so fucking stupid, like funny. No, I mean they're seriously degrading you and making you feel less than, and they don't apologize for it and they don't see any wrong in what they're doing. No accountability whatsoever. No affection or communication. They're making you feel like invalidated and they don't care about communicating after a fight. They don't want to make it better. They just don't give a shit. And then there's ignoring needs and feelings. So remember last episode I talked about observations, feelings, needs, and requests. That doesn't exist in the abuser's world at all. There will be no, oh, I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. No, I'm sorry you feel that way type of mentality. That's what they will most likely make you feel. Also, undermining a sense of self-worth with constant criticism, belittling, name calling, etc. That just ties on top of treating your partner badly. Now, I want to also go towards last episode as well about nonviolent communication. it is probable that you've called your partner a name. It is probable that you've criticized your partner, right? That is a evaluation, not an observation. But you being able to recognize that that is wrong is a step forward. It does not make you an abuser. It makes you human. So please be important of that distinction between the two, because I don't want you to feel like, oh, am I an abuser? No, you're human and you're learning. Abuser is more very much in-depth, more aggressive type of behavior, constant, not recognizing or having any type of accountability at all. Then we go into the physical. So this is inflicting or attempting to inflict bodily harm. Okay? Inflicting or attempting to inflict bodily harm. For example, before my ex threw me across the room, he would hit around me and I would tell him that I was scared of him. He's like, "Oh, you're scared of me, huh? I'm scared of you," because I would start raising my voice and have reactive abuse, which again, I want to get into later today, as well as the episode in a couple of weeks with the Bridge podcast with interpartner violence. So that term saying they will hit around you before they hit you or put their hands on you is a true statement, and I lived through it. Then there's punching, slapping, hair pulling, kicking, shoving, etc. This is pretty much exactly what mainstream sees it as. Withholding resources to maintain health. So this can be like, I need to go to the doctor. I don't feel very good. You punched me in the face yesterday. My head feels very swollen. Oh, you don't need it. You're fine. I didn't even hit you that hard type of talk. Also, hiding your medications, not allowing you to eat when you want, hygiene, etc. You want to shower. You don't. Who do you need a shower for? Huh? Why do you need a shower? Why do you need to feel good? Like that type of thing. Also, forcing you to have drugs or alcohol to make you feel some type of way. Maybe to take advantage of you. That is also something that is all tied down to physical. Physical is not just the punching, right? It's medications, access to healthcare, things like that. Then we have psychological. So this is isolation from family and friends. So remember when I said that they're kind of isolating you from allowing you to go to school? When this comes into economic, like, why are you trying to like go to school? You're stupid anyways. Those are your friends. You have friends at work and school, and you have friends where you can tell them what's happening at home, and they don't like that. Stalking, constant check-ins, the texting, you need to tell me when you're here, when you're there, when you're there. And that's not to say like you want communication from your partner, like, hey, what time will you be home? No, this is like everywhere you go, you need to tell them where you're at, what time, who's there, ages, names, social security numbers. I mean, that's going deeply into it, but I mean, some abusers do go that deep into the abusive psychological behavior. And then we have the mainstream gaslighting and attempting to install fear. And this is with intimidation, threats, blackmail, etc. Now, gaslighting is making them believe that you did not say something, even though you did, or making them feel as if what you said really wasn't that bad. I punched you in the face, but it really wasn't that bad. And I'm installing blame outside of myself. I punched you in the face because you were acting stupid, or I punched you in the face because you were walking towards me. And that was one of the excuses that my ex told me, was that because I was very upset that he threw my stuff out of the room, my voice got a lot higher and I was coming forward to him to go into his room to grab my belongings that were left in the room that he locked me out of. And that's when he picked me up and threw me, and I could not believe it. And he said, "Well, you were coming at me first," and he thought I was going to hurt him. So yeah, I used to give benefit of the doubt to that, but I just don't anymore. I wasn't coming at you aggressively. But this is just as my own self, you know, awareness of what really was happening, and also self-disclosing to you guys, as this is talking about the taboo and I'm going to talk about it because it's something serious. And using my own personal, experience might just help you guys realize like, oh, that was happening to me too, or like, wow, this girl is successful and has this podcast and is better now. I can be there too. So any tiny little movement and success that I can make to help other people to get out of situations like this, I'm all here for it. Lastly, we also have sexual abuse. This is coercing sexual contact without consent. So this also ties into marital rape, and this can happen. People say that, pretty much 80% of the rape that happens is with people that you do know, because they gaslight you and they make you feel like, oh, I know them, and then it feels like, oh, it's okay, like I'm married to them. That's okay. Like I have to give them sex. No, you have choice. You have autonomy in your marriage. Um, and this ties down to whether you're female or male or any other gender you decide to identify with, but you have you have autonomy. Keep that autonomy. You do not give yourself an excuse of if they're touching you and you don't want to be touched and they're not stopping when you say stop, that is abuse. Stop it where it's at. And then we also have forced prostitution. You're with forcing, them to have sex with another individual, or maybe making them make content with you and you don't want to. Then there's also withholding birth control pills. This kind of also goes into the physical when it comes to withholding medications from you in health. But this is like baby trapping you, forcing you to have baby with him or her so you stay. Also undermining sexuality, threats to basically out them, like you're bi, well, I'm gonna tell them anyway, so you better have sex with me, and kind of making them feel like if they don't do it, then you're gonna out them and they're not ready for that yet. Also accusations of infidelity. You've heard it all. Oh, you're cheating on me. Why the fuck would you do that? And most of the time, they're the cheater. So again, economic, emotional, physical, psychological, sexual. Economic, emotional, physical, psychological, and sexual are all types of abuse. And we need to recognize that these can go hand in hand. And the little examples that I gave you are just the kind of mainstream examples that I have here on this list. But again, it goes in way more deep than what I could possibly go into. I also want to talk about characteristics of the abusive partners. So, we're going to go on how abusers might act and then how survivors might feel. So, abusers might have lack of empathy. That goes straight into my last episode with empathy in action. They won't have the ability to observe, show you their feelings, their needs, and requests. It will come in evaluations and degrading and also demands. They are manipulative, and they're also contradictory statements. They have contradictory statements and behaviors. They're acting out of line. They're often blaming others. That goes back again to what I said about putting the responsibility outside of themselves. That's not nonviolent communication. Abusers do not have nonviolent communication. They're controlling, they're entitled, they're selfish, they're self-centered, superior. They will make you feel inferior to them. They will try to make you feel inferior by putting you down and using all those types of abuse. And then we have possessive. They'd be very possessive over you. That goes back to the controlling. And also they will have you confused of love and abuse. Like, what's the difference? That's something that I really struggled with. I was like, him yelling at me and then like kind of wanting, to fix it afterwards and showing me love, like whether it be like in sex, like right, like all of I realized too when it comes to sexual trauma is a lot of my you know, libido comes from arguments. I still to this day get extremely horny after having an argument with my partner. And I want it rough, I want it hard, and I have no doubt in my mind that um is from my past because the sex would just be so good. So when it was good, it was good, but when it was bad, it was really bad. But I know we would have really good sex afterwards, so that's why my libido, and please comment if anybody relates to this, is tied to that, and it's become a lot of unlearning that I have to do when it comes to that type of thought process. Like, okay, Natalie, you're arguing, that doesn't mean you need to like now have sex to make it better. I still have those feelings, but I try not to act on it as much. I try to give a lot more time to it, because if I don't, then again, I'm just feeding to that desire. That's an unhealthy desire. So please, really don't really focus on not confusing love and abuse, in which they will try so hard for you to do. I have a stuffy nose. And then we kind of move on to how survivors might feel. So they're scared, they're confused, they're overwhelmed, they're ashamed, they're humiliated, helpless. They feel unworthy. They also feel dependent and alone. And that's why I'm here today to tell you you're not alone. You have all of these access to resources. And I know sometimes it makes you feel like you don't have anybody, but you do. You have this resource belt for you. And we are all here. And there's so many resources out there, but it's so hard to access them. And I am very aware of that. I'm very aware of the fact that, these domestic violence browsers and resources that I'm going to give you, they have that quick exit button. They'll delete your whole history. And they have like a silent call, and they have all of these options for you, because it is scary and it can get really scary. I also want to say that if your situation isn't that mainstream, like super, super abusive, and it's not physical, that that doesn't mean you're not in a domestic violence relationship. Mainstream or on TV or in TV shows, it's all abusive, like physical, and it's gory and it's horrible. You can have some of the what I explained earlier and still be in a domestic violence relationship. So again, please be aware of that. I also want to talk about the high risk factors that I was taught in this interpartner violence presentation, which was super important and interesting to hear. So, from the statistics that I will read later, what has come up for high risk factors are stalking behaviors. So that can go into like voyeurism, right? Like wanting to watch other people do things, have sex. Victim believes offender is capable of killing them. Physical abuse is increasing in frequency or severity. They're recently separated and a victim has left home where they resided together. Um, the offender is unemployed, and then the stepchild present in the home. So basically, that's a reminder for the abuser that their victim or survivor was with another person before them, and it makes them feel less than. And they are just going to degrade, physically abuse, because how dare you be with somebody before me? The offender has broken through a window or a door to get to the victim. This goes into like, legal issues. They're extremely controlling, forced sex. Also, strangulation increases the chance of lethality by 750%. 750%. Physical abuse during pregnancy, also weapons. So the offender owns guns or offender has ways to obtain guns. And then there's threats. They threat to kill themselves or their partner, or they threat with the weapons that they have. So those are kind of the high risk factors just based on statistics. Of course, there's plenty of other ones, but this is essentially saying if they have this, they will also probably be an abuser according to statistics. Also, you know, the hardest part about working in the clinical field that I do as a school-based counselor is I do experience witnessing rather children who have to watch their parents go through it. And domestic violence especially impacts children. They might feel guilty about loving the abusive parent, guilty about not protecting the abused parent, worried about the future, concerned about losing a parent. They're anxious, angry, helpless, confused, powerless, and scared. That's like really hear that. They feel anxious, angry, helpless, confused, powerless, and scared. They don't know who to love. This is the role models that they're seeing, like they're now confusing love and abuse. They now don't know the difference between, wait, does this mean that does daddy love mommy, or why is he hurting her? And they are forced to grow up fast to understand. And I watch this every single day. and it is the hardest thing to watch, and I then feel helpless. I wanna give them all these resources and make it go by fast, but that's not how the system works. There's wait lists for shelters. There's processes to be able to apply for assistance because if they're 100% dependent on their partner for financials, they can't get an apartment just like that, especially in Niagara County. Don't get me started on the lack of resources in Niagara County. They have like very few resources in Niagara County, and most of them are full, have a waiting list, or have area code distinctions. And then the area code that they can go to, a random church, doesn't have this, that, or the other. It is so concerning. And these children are left to grow up fast and to basically be their emotional support person for their parent. And that's not fair. They have to give up their childhood for that. Um, they also might behave and behaviors might become a problem. So they could have regressive behaviors. So that's thumb sucking, bedwetting, or baby talk. There's, children who are older, like like 7 to 10 years old, that are still putting things in their mouth. That is regressive behaviors. Then we have aggressive behaviors, so bullying, violent outbursts. They also can have hyperactivity or difficulty focusing, withdrawal from friends and family. They can have eating disorders and very risky behaviors, maybe getting involved with the wrong people. And this goes with any age. Remember that. There's also lessons, like I said, that they might take away. They are responsible for the actions of others. They feel like this is my fault. Mommy and daddy are fighting because of me. I'm the problem. Because sometimes they'll fight over the kid. A person has the right to control another person. They're learning, like, oh, well, mommy's telling daddy that he has to do this, so that's okay. Violence is okay and a way to solve problems. This again goes back into empathy and action, where I talked about, reframing our ways of talking and our actual examples in from childhood. If we were taught the compassionate language, we wouldn't say that, we would say more so that I'm recognizing that violence is not the way that I like to handle it, and it makes me uncomfortable when people are doing that. But the children are learning that it's okay. And then they're learning that domestic violence is normal. And they also may feel like nothing is safe and like there's something wrong with them. And this will build and build and build into their adult lives of how they're handling issues and how they're in their own relationships, because their role model before wasn't that great. There's this TikTok that talks about what your parents did not teach you or what your mom did not teach you. And if I can find it, I'll link it below. But that's scary. You want to have that mindset like that book. It ends with us. Um, but it's hard. And I recognize that. Um, Also, I want to talk about, why do you think that they stay? I talked about to you that I don't judge if you decide to stay, but they might go back. And you could be speaking to a family member and a friend, and you're so happy that they're not with them anymore, and they end up with them again, and then you judge them, and then they feel like, oh, then I'll shut down. I won't tell you anything. Um, they might stay for physical safety. Okay. The most dangerous time for a victim is the 3 months after they leave, and the risk remains elevated for an entire year. Leaving leaving related activities are often triggers for abuse and homicide, including filing for court, pursuing charges, separating finances or saving cash, packing bags or collecting documents. All of that is scary. That's hard to do in secret if they're always home. Um, Also, abusers often directly threaten the victim's children or pets to dissuade leaving. So imagine somebody saying that, well, if you leave to go do this downtown, I'm going to kill your dog while you're gone. And that will make anybody stay. Even if you don't believe that, there's some form of truth in there. Also, you can also have fear of losing custody of the children, or of the pets, or that it'll decrease your standard of living. You have a financial dependence on them. You have a fear of homelessness, which goes back down to the standard of living, cultural, religious, or community pressure to stay together. In certain cultures, divorce is not an option. And if you're abused, so be it. Sucks for you. And that's something that we're really trying to get out of the mainstream. And I think will be a topic of conversation in the episode in a couple of weeks with the Bridge podcast. And also love slash is inconsistency of abuse. This is the confusion between love and abuse. So I now want to go into some facts and statistics. These are heavy, and I just, again, trigger warning. But hearing this broke my heart. It really broke my heart. So this is from Truman and Morgan 2014. 76% of victims of non-fatal domestic violence are women. Domestic violence will affect 1 in 4 women and 1 in 10 men at some point in their life, from Smith et al. Domestic violence accounts for 21% of all violent crime. That's 2020 statistics. 1 in 2 female murder victims and 1 in 13 male murder victims are killed by intimate partners. The most dangerous time for victims is the 3-month period immediately after they leave. I mentioned that earlier. 83% of female interpartner violence homicide victims were seen in the system, police or healthcare, in the year before they died. So they had documentation about this. And it takes the victim an average of 7 attempts to leave their abuser. That's averaged. And I think it took me just about that amount of time to finally leave my partner, or leave my abuser. It took me a lot of hate towards him and for him to do very bad things to me. Also, in the presentation, she went over LGBTQ plus DV facts and statistics. So I wanted to share those as well. Transgender women are 3 times more likely to experience sexual violence and financial violence. From 2017 to 2020, bisexual individuals experienced 8 times more domestic violence than straight individuals. That's 2022 statistic. 8 times more likely. I think that's due to liking both genders. So they're like, oh, well, you're going to cheat on me. It's like the threat, essentially. 44% of lesbian women and 61% of bisexual women experienced rape, physical violence, and stalking by intimate partner in their lifetime. 26% of gay men and 37% of bisexual men experienced rape, physical violence, and stalking by intimate partner in their lifetime. I already shared that, but oops. Gay men were 1.8 times more likely to require medical attention and 1.5 times more likely to suffer an injury as compared to individuals who did not identify as a gay man. 1.8 times more likely. In 2015, 31% of LGBTQ survivors who interacted with the police were arrested instead of their abuser. Misarrest. That is something that really frustrated me about the system, is that there has to be a, target person. There has to be seen someone as the aggressor. There's been plenty of videos online that show the abuser getting away with it, and then they're watching the survivor or victim basically giving reactive abuse, and then they have a video of it. That ties to my personal example. So when he did, so it all tied to me finding some things on his phone, on Snapchat memories of him cuddling with somebody who he said they were just friends, blah, 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 blah. I got a little upset about it. I walked away. I was like, I'm not going to get mad about it because it was so many years ago, but okay. I came back. All my stuff was thrown out of the room, and I got really upset. I was like, open the door, open the door, open the door. And I was kind of getting that like reactive abuse. I was like, oh no, this is going to happen again. And so everything came down to the end of it. He threw me, across the room after the argument, and he said, I caught it all on video. How antagonizing. He said, I knew you were going to act like this, so I took a video of it so I could save my ass. And in the video, you could literally hear me. He wouldn't let me have the video or record the video. I got some clips of it. You can hear me saying, "Get off of me!" Boom, and I hit the floor. That did not save his ass. I did not call the cops because I did not want to be seen as the aggressor. And I knew I would be seen as the aggressor and I'd get arrested. And when you get the cops involved, it's with you forever. It's forever on your documents. And I just couldn't do it. And that was that. And it took me one more time to get back with him for a little bit. And then I finally left. So when you're listening to someone who's going through domestic violence and just talking about them, what can you say? What should you say? It is important that you listen, that you're compassionate, don't judge, be supportive. Also acknowledge their feelings and that they are valid, whatever it might be. Whatever it might be. Don't try to correct what they're feeling. Also, maintain your current relationship with them. You are a friend. You are a parent. Don't try to be their therapists unless you are their therapist. Ask how you can support their safety. Also, respect their choices, even if you disagree. If they say they're going to stay, respect it. Also, encourage them to reach out to the domestic violence services. Invite, a call. Say like, hey, I'll call with you if that's something you want to do. Make sure it's in a safe place. And also encourage them to stay connected with friends, family, and other supports. That's also really hard if they're having, an isolated type of abuse with you. It doesn't help. But you try your best. You remain compassionate and you do not judge. Here's responses that are unhelpful. Automatically calling 911 or law enforcement. That is not for you to do at all. If there is severe threat and they essentially are about to off the person, maybe. But if they're fighting, not for you. You do not automatically call them. Also, don't use victim blaming language or asking victim blaming questions. For example, what were you wearing? What did you say to do to make him so angry? Were you drinking or was your partner drinking? That's victim blaming. No need to do that. You don't need those details. You really don't. You're there for their safety. Also, don't press the victim for details beyond what they openly want to share with you. Like, oh my God, like, what did he say? Like, did he say this? Did he say this? Like, did he do this? No need for that. You're there to listen and remain compassionate. Don't try to be the fixer, okay? Again, they may want a solution, silence, or a listening ear. And don't give ultimatums to try to force them to leave. Kind of like, Natalie, if you stay with him, I'm no longer being your friend. I just can't do it anymore. I've had that happen to me. I did. It was really hurtful. And that's all I want to say about that. Abandoning the victim or cutting off ties if they choose to stay. That's back to, what I just said. Don't threaten to cut off ties because you don't agree with what they're saying. So there's a lot of different types of avenues that I can go down with this topic. And it is a heavy one. But I want to make sure that I end this episode with the resources to reach out to. This will all be linked down in the show notes for whoever is watching. So this specific presentation that I had at work was from the Haven House. Haven House is a 24-hour hotline, and their hotline is 716-884-6000. Again, 716-884-6000. You can call for questions or get connected to services or anything like that. If you do call them, they will make sure to get back with you, within 3 to 5 days for an actual counselor. But they will screen you that day and see if you are in immediate danger. Here's where I see the problem. To me, their screening does not go in depth. And, one of my clients was left feeling like their situation is not bad enough. I don't like that. So there's lots of other resources. But Haven House has shelter, they have a children's program, they have short-term domestic violence counseling, they have something called art empowerment, which is beautiful. They have support groups, they have telehealth available. They also have domestic violence education, parenting after violence. This is all grant funded. This is all free. This is all free. Also, there's crisis services at 716-834-3131. Family Justice Center is 716-558-SAFE. Again, 716-558-SAFE. Then there is the Be Safe program at the District Attorney's Office at 716-858-4630. Then there is RAHAMA, 716-777-3468. Some of these are culturally based, but they're never going to turn away anybody who's coming in for help. Then there's BRAVE, which is Buffalo Rising Against Violence at ECMC at 716-898-6491. And then there's Caring Society of Buffalo, 716-807-0600. There's also the YWCA, which is in Niagara County. I don't have the contact information for that. But again, when I talked about how Niagara County does not have a lot of resources for you, that's how it is. If you're listening and you're out of the state, I will be more than willing to look up the resources in your area or get access to somebody who I know that will help you with the resources in your area. The New York State Domestic Violence Hotline, though, is 1-800-942-6906. For the Spanish interpretation, there's the 1-800-942-6908. Remember, there's no wrong door. There's no wrong number. Any of those numbers that you could just remember listening to this, call, and they will get you to the right resources. I know this was a heavy topic, and I know it was a lot of just jargon, but it's things that will bring awareness to it all. So I want to thank you for taking the time and sitting down and really listening to what in depth it is, whether it's you trying to learn for you or trying to learn for somebody else. I appreciate the dedication to trying to learn and listening to this podcast. I know this episode was very heavy, but it was well needed. And I appreciate you all for listening. But stay tuned. I know today's episode was really heavy, as I mentioned at the end of the episode, but I wanted to do a decompress. There is no sex toy of the week, but I have homework for you. Your homework is to educate yourself, educate others, send this podcast to people that really need to hear it and hear those statistics that might stand out to them. Educate yourself on what physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, etc. abuse is and spread the word. Just because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month does not mean it's the only month that we should be talking about it. Also, keep in mind, domestic violence happens to all genders, all people, all races. And that is something we need to focus on. Be aware of what is going on with your friends' lives as well. Be open about it. Don't beat around the bush. And there is no wrong door. Below, I will share all of the resources that I spoke about today. Please feel free to reach out if you ever want to talk about anything, have any questions for me or clarifications, or ways that I could be better, or some advice for me for what I went through. I love you all, and remember, with lots of lube, Clit-Municate. Goodbye.